Welcome again to my channel, everyone. This is Trev from Trevessence, and this morning we are going to continue the reading of Spare by Prince Harry. For those of you who are new here, a very, very special welcome to you. And for those of you who have been following the reading, I want to say thank you so much for your continued support. Now, yesterday we read a few chapters. Um, and in those chapters, it spoke about how Harry and Meghan had to be navigating their way around the paparazzi. They could not get away everywhere they went. The paparazzi were there shooting videos and just um, snapping pictures, making their lives really uncomfortable. And not so much their lives, but Megan's life, because even though she had been an actor for a while and she was known in those circles, she was not accustomed to being followed everywhere, being photographed everywhere, and even her neighbors were being targeted. People were paparazzis and newspapers, magazines, and their editors were also harassing her neighbors, trying to get them to join with them to make this woman's life a living hell. I cannot, for me, imagine living a life like that where your every move is being scrutinized. Your every move. He talks about how newspapers were printing articles about her having been with different men that she knew nothing about. They were sort of just making up stuff as they go along. And you and I know that the more gory somebody can make it seems like your life is, the more interested they get people to be in your life. And the more ugliness they can talk, the more readers they will get. And a lot of editors and people who print stuff for others to read usually like that because they no longer think about the humanity or lack thereof that's in the article that they're printing, but rather they think about how much money they're going to make, how many people are going to be interested in hearing something ugly about this person. He talks also about how they were saying she was right out of Compton. And even though Megan did not live in Compton, lived nowhere near Compton, and did not have even an upbringing that was reminiscent of Compton, it's just because she is Black. That's all there was to it. When they were talking about her mother and her mother's dreads and how they're going to, if Meghan and Harry continue together and have kids, or it's going to interfere with the royal blood. Royal blood, my back. And now, guys, you see, when us as colored people, I say black people, colored people, black people, when we talk about the racism that happens in the schools and the workplaces, and other people look at you and they'll be like, oh, no, it's like to them, racism is something that's from a bygone era. And those of us who have experienced it, we know that racism is not from a bygone era. It exists even today because there are a lot of pale skinned people who believe that they are somehow superior to those of us who have a darker hue. And it will come out in their actions, it will come out in their speeches, it will come out in how they execute their authority over you. It will come out some way or the other. And some people will look at you as though you were crazy when you identify it and talk about it. But we know. So for those newspapers to just come out and start talking ugly about Meghan, it was only because she's part Black. If she wasn't, if she had not a thread of Black blood in her, there would be not a sound. No one would have said all of the ugly things that they said about her. And so we are going to continue this morning. I need to put a little bit of music in the background, not too much, but I'm going to put this one that sounds like a feeding duck. Guys, tell me if it is too loud. I need to get the volume down a little bit. Buenos días, mi amor, ¿cómo está? That's a little bit too loud, isn't it? Let me turn it down because if I can hear it so loudly, I can only imagine that it's loud for you too. Hold on, let me turn it down volume. Put it down to around 6. There we go. Is that better now, guys? Okay, I think that should be better. So without further ado, let me just let me continue with the reading. I'm going to read the last chapter that we read yesterday. So not the last chapter, the last paragraph, so we can catch up with where we are going into chapter 28 of part 3. If there was one thing to which I did seem undeniably addicted, however, it was the press. Reading it, raging at it, she said, these were obvious compulsions. I laughed. True. But they are such shit. She laughed. They are. Chapter 28 of part 3. I always thought Cressida had performed a miracle, opening me up, releasing suppressed emotions. But she had only started the miracle, and now the therapist brought it to completion. All my life, I told people I couldn't remember the past, couldn't remember my mom, but I never gave anyone the full picture. My memory was dead. Now, through months of therapy, my memory twitched, kicked, sputtered. It came to life. Some days I'd open my eyes to find Mummy standing before me. 1,000 images returned, some so bright and vivid that they were like holograms. I remembered mo- I remembered mornings in Mommy's apartment at Kensington Palace. The nanny waking Willie and me up, helping us down to Mommy's bedroom. I remember that she had a waterbed, and Willie and I would jump up and down on the mattress, screaming, laughing, our hair standing straight up. I remember the breakfast together, Mommy loving grapefruit and lychees, seldom drinking coffee or tea. I remembered that after breakfast, we'd embark on the working day with her, sitting by her side during her first phone calls, auditing her business meetings. I remembered Willie and me joining her for a chat with Christy Turlington, Claudia Schiffer, and Cindy Crawford. Very confusing, especially for two shy boys at or about the age of puberty. I remembered bedtimes in Kensington Palace, saying goodnight at the foot of the stairs, kissing her soft neck, inhaling her perfume, then lying in bed in the dark, feeling so far away, so alone, and longing to hear her voice just one more time. I remembered my bedroom being the farthest from hers, and in the dark, in the terrible silence, being unable to relax, unable to let go. The therapist urged me to press on. We are breaking through, she said. Let's not stop. I brought to her office a bottle of Mommy's favorite perfume. I had reached out to Mommy's sister, asked her for the name. First, first by Van Cleef and Arpels. At the start of our session, I lifted the lid, took a deep sniff, like a tab of LSD. I read somewhere that smell is I read somewhere that smell is our oldest sense, and that fitted with what I experienced in that moment. Images rising from what felt like the most primal part of my brain. I remembered one day at Ludgrove, Mummy stuffing sweets into my sock. Outside sweet, Outside sweets were forbidden, so Mommy was flouting school rules, giggling as she did so, which made me love her even more. I remembered both of us laughing as we buried the sweets deep in my socks, and me squealing, "Oh, Mommy, you are so naughty." I remembered the brand of those sweets as well. They were opal fruits, hard squares of bright colors, not unlike those resurrected memories. No wonder I was so keen on grub days and opal fruits. I remembered going to tennis lessons in the car, Mommy driving, Willie and me in the back. Without warning, she trod on the accelerator and we went rocketing ahead, up narrow streets, blasting through red lights, whipping around corners. Willie and I were strapped into our suits. Willie and I were strapped into our seats. So we couldn't look out of the back window, but we had a sense of what was chasing us. Paps on motorbikes and mopeds. Are they going to kill us, Mummy? Are we going to die? You okay? You need to sit down and rest this. You'll be all right. Let's continue, guys. I'm talking to my sister there, but let's continue. Are they going to kill us, Mummy? Are we going to die? Mummy wearing big sunglasses, peering into the mirrors. After 15 minutes and several near smashes, Mummy slammed on the brakes, pulled over, jumped out, and walked towards the paps. Leave us alone, for God's sake. I'm with my children. Can't you just leave us alone? Trembling, pink cheeked, she got back into the car, slammed the door, rolled up the windows, leaned her head on the steering wheel, and wept while the paps kept clicking and clicking. I remember the tears falling from her big sunglasses, and I remembered Willie looking frozen, like a statue, and I remembered the paps just firing and firing and firing. And I also remembered feeling such hatred for them and such deep and eternal love for everyone in the car. I remembered being on holiday, Necker Island, all three of us sitting in the cliffside hut. And here came a boat with a gang of photographers looking at us. We had been playing with water balloons that day, and we had a bunch of them lying about. Mommy quickly rigged up a catapult and decided that we divide the balloons among us. On the count of three, we began raining them down on the heads of the photographers. The sound of her laughter that day, lost to me all these years, was back. It was back, loud and clear as the traffic outside the therapist's windows. I cried with joy. I cried because I heard it. Welcome into the live, guys. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you are new here, a very, very special welcome to you. If you have not yet hit that subscribe button yet, now is a great time to do so. And don't forget to hit that like button on this live. And to all my returning travelers who are here right now and those who will come in afterwards, a very, very, very special thank you to all of you who have been supporting me on this journey. I sincerely appreciate it. Now we're going to move on to chapter 29 of part 3 of the book Spare, written by Prince Harry. Chapter 29. The Sun ran a correction for their porn story. In a tiny box on page 2, where no one would see it. What did it matter? The damage had already been done. Plus, it cost Meg tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. I rang Pa yet again. Don't read it, darling boy. I cut him off. I wasn't about to hear that nonsense again. Also, I wasn't a boy anymore. I tried a new argument. I reminded Pa that these were the same shoddy bastards who had been portraying him as a clown all his life. ridiculing him for sounding the alarm about climate change. These were his tormentors, his bullies, and now they were tormenting and bullying his son and his son's girlfriend. Did that not inspire his outrage? Why have I got to beg you, Pa? Why is this not already a priority for you? Why is this not causing you anguish, keeping you up at night? That the press are treating Meg like this. You adore her. You told me so yourself. You bonded over your shared love of music. You think she's funny and witty and impeccably mannered. You told me so, Pa. So why, Pa? Why? I couldn't get a straight answer. The conversation went the conversation went in circles, and when we hung up, I felt abandoned. Meg, meanwhile, reached out to Camilla, who tried to console her by saying this was just what the press always did to newcomers, that it would all pass in due time. That Camilla had been the bad guy once. The implication being what? Now it was Meg's turn, as if it were apples to apples. Camilla also suggested to Meg that I become Governor General of Bermuda, which would solve all our problems by removing us from the red hot center of the maelstrom. Guys, that part there had me paused for a little bit. Okay, so that was being floated around that Harry could be the Governor General for Bermuda. You know, Bermuda is one of Britain's islands as well. So we're going to read on. I'm sure he's going to talk more about this, like he does with everything else. He sort of, you know, start talking about something, and it sparks our interest, and then he doesn't say anything about it again for another two or three chapters. So let's read on. We will hear what else he has to say about that and about that Camilla as well. Right, 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 I thought. And one added bonus to that plan would be to get us out of the picture. In desperation, I went to Willie. I took advantage of the first quiet moment I'd had with him in years. The end of August 2017 at Althorpe, 20th anniversary of Mummy's death. His dad is full, he's really full of it. And I agree with you, Kad. His dad is really full of it. He didn't want to say anything because of course he was in cahoots with the press. He was in cahoots. Certainly they didn't want a black person in their family. And being quiet was being complicit with the paparazzis and the newspapers. They were in agreement with the newspapers saying all that shit. They were. Because if they were saying all that crap about somebody else in the royal family, they would have come out with all their powers. They would have said a bunch. They would have had press releases and lawyers talking and all of this. And the press would have had to cut it off. But no, it was Megan. It was a black girl. It was somebody they too internally despised. So they weren't gonna say anything. It's just the plain and honest truth. Let us continue. Too bad. Harry is black. Once you black, you can't. Once you go black, you can't go back. God, you're something else. But let us read that last paragraph again. In desperation, I went to Willie. I took advantage of the first quiet moment I'd had with him in years, the end of August 2017, at Althorpe, 20th anniversary of Mummy's death. We rowed the little boat out to the island. The bridge had been removed to give my mother privacy, to keep intruders away. We each had a bouquet of flowers, which we set on the grave. We stood there a while, having our own thoughts, and then we talked about life. I gave him a quick summary of what Meg and I had been dealing with. Don't worry, Harold. No one believes that shit. Not true. They do. It's drip fed to them day by day, and they come to believe it without even being aware. He didn't have a satisfying answer for that. So we were silent. Then he said something extraordinary. He said he thought Mummy was here, meaning among us. Yes, me too, Willie. I think she's been in my life, Harold, guiding me, setting things up for me. I think she has helped me start a family, and I feel as though she's helping you now too. I nodded. Totally agree. I feel as though she helped me find Meg. Willie took a step back. He looked concerned. That seemed to be taking things a bit too far. Well, well, now, Harold, I'm not sure about that. I wouldn't say that. So you see that William, he's another piece of work. So he thought his mommy helped him find his wife, but he didn't think she helped his brother find his. Holy crap. Anywho, guys, welcome into the live. Thank you all so much for being here. Let's continue on to chapter 30. Meg came to London, September 2017. We were not caught in the kitchen preparing dinner. The whole cottage was filled with love, filled to overflowing. It even seemed to spill out the open door into the garden outside, a scrubby little patch of ground that no one had wanted for a very, very long time, but which Meg and I had slowly reclaimed. We had raked and mowed. We had raked and mown plants and warts. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Let me just take a look at what is distracting me there for a minute and then look back at the reading. We had raked and mown, planted and watered, and many evenings we sat out there on a blanket, listening to classical music concerts wafting over from the park. I told Meg about the garden just on the other side of our wall, Mummy's garden, where Willie and I played as kids. It was now sealed off from us forever, as my memories had once been. Whose garden is it now? She asked. It belongs to Princess Michael of Kent and her Siamese cats. Mummy despised those cats. Oh my God, guys. This seems so taunting. So the garden was his mom's. Now it's no longer hers. Well, she's dead. She don't need a garden. But it now belongs to to Princess Michael of Kent. That's another of their family members. And her Siamese cats. So it's like a taunting that you give the garden to someone with the cats that his mommy hated. So it's almost like saying, well, your mommy will never come in here. Her spirit won't come here because the cats are here and she hated these cats. Boy, them people are not easy. Honestly, my friend, them people are not easy. You all remember, for those of you who have been here, you all remember when he was talking about his family members who had run away from the royal family. And then when they died, they were supposed to be buried there. And how the queen had put their graves way out at the far end of the garden, as though it was her final way of revenge against them, her final way of thumbing her nose and pointing her finger at them to say, I got the last laugh. You'll remember that? Boy, these people are something else. And it just shows that they're humans too. But anyway, let us continue. As I smelt the garden and considered this new life, cherished this new life, Meg was sitting on the other side of the kitchen, scooping m- magamama from cartons into bowls. Without thinking, I blurted out, I don't know. I just, I, I, just, I had my back to her. I froze mid sentence, hesitant to go on, hesitant to turn around. You don't know what, Has? I just, yes, I love you. I listened for a response. There was none. Oh my God, he's stuttering. He's probably sensing an overwhelming feeling of wanting to confirm his love for her, but there's something holding him back. And I wonder if that If whatever it is that is boiling up inside of him is just from him having grown up with such a regimental upbringing he has had, and now he feels the desire to break free. And he is having a battle, an internal battle with that decision. And with his family not supporting his choice of a woman, he's having a hard time. And I can only imagine what's going on with him. Let us continue. But I see money. So when I see money, I got to take a pause. Thank you for that super chat card. Thank you so. I tell you, I can always depend on you, my sister. You are the mom, always, and I tell them all the time. You're not attached to the hips. Yeah, there you go. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that super chat. God says, if this is the royal way of life, I wouldn't want to be them. They sound miserable. Exactly. It does have some misery. It does have some misery attached to it, for sure. Hey, morning. How are you? Yeah, guys, I'm sitting out. I'm sitting out. I'm looking out. So sometimes when you hear me be distracted, it's not like I'm sitting in my living room reading to y'all. I'm outside looking out at the clear blue Miami skies. And so I see my neighbors pass by every now and then. So I get a little bit distracted. But it's a pleasure being here. It's a pleasure reading for you all, for us. All right. Let us continue. Now I could hear her or feel her walking towards me. I turned and there she was, right before me. I love you too, Has. The words had been under the tip of my tongue almost from the start, so in one sense they didn't feel particularly revelatory or even necessary. Of course, I loved her. Meg knew that. Meg could see it. The whole world could. I loved her with all my heart, as I'd never loved anyone before. And yet, saying it made everything real. Saying it set things in motion automatically. Saying it was a step. It meant we now had a few more very big steps ahead, like moving in together. I asked if she'd consider moving to Britain, moving into Notcott with me. We talked about all that would mean and how it would work and what she'd be giving up. We talked about the logistics of winding down her life in Toronto, when and how, and above all, for what exactly. I can't just I can't just leave my show and quit my job to give it a shot. Would moving i- would moving to Britain mean a forever commitment? Hey boo, what's going on? I'm so excited. Check my messages. Okay. Okay. All right. I will. I will. But can I get through this reading first, or is it super, super, super important that I check it right now? I will check it, my child. I will. So good to see you, my love. I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are, whatever you are doing. I love you, love you, my boy. I'm sorry, guys. That was just my son just stepped in there to tell me he knows exactly where to find me when he can't find me on my phone. You see where he come to find me. All right, let us continue. Yes, I said it would. In that case, she said with a smile, yes. We kissed, hugged, sat down to our supper. I sighed. On the road, I thought. But later, after she had fallen asleep, I analyzed myself. A holdover from therapy, perhaps. I realized that, mixed in with all my boiling emotions, there was a big streak of relief. She had said it back, the actual words, I love you. And it hadn't been inevitable, it hadn't been a formality. Part of me, I couldn't deny, had been braced for the worst case. Has, I'm sorry, but I just don't know if I can do this. Part of me feared she'd bolted. Go back to Toronto and change her number. Heed the advice of her girlfriends. Is anyone worth this? Part of me thought she'd be smart to do so. Oh my God. There they are struggling with moving forward with their relationship, considering all the obstacles that's standing in their way. Let's move on to chapter 31. By pure chance, the 2017 Invictus Games were going to be in Toronto, Meg's backyard. Perfect occasion. The palace decided for our first official public outing. Meg was a bit nervous. Me too. But we had no choice. Has to be done, we said. We have hidden from the world long enough. Also, this would be the most controlled, predictable environment we could ever hope for. Above all, once we did a public date, it might reduce the bounty on our heads among the paps, which at that point was running at around £100,000. We tried to make the whole thing as normal as possible. We watched wheelchair tennis from the front row, focused on the game and the good cause, ignored the whir of cameras. We managed to have fun, to crack a few jokes with some Kiwis sitting beside us. And the photos that appeared the following day were sweet, though several in the British press slammed Meg for wearing ripped jeans. No one mentioned that everything she wore, down to the flats and button down shirt, had been pre approved by the palace. And, and by no one, I mean not anyone at the palace. One statement that week in defense of Meg, it might have made a world of difference. Happy Sunday to you, Saniki. How are you doing? So you see, guys, not everything we've read in the press about Meghan and Harry is true. We know that from reading this book. And also, when they were going out on their engagements representing the royal family, everything had to be approved by the palace. So if the palace approved Meghan's outfit, and then the press tried to make it seem as though the 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 outfit was out of line, I I start to wonder if the press and somebody in the palace were working together. So listen to what I'm saying now. So this is where I'm going with this thought. Could it be that somebody in the palace who was on the approving team, the team that would approve whatever Meghan wore, would approve something like the ripped jeans? They would approve the ripped jeans because they knew that the press would target the ripped jeans and start talking ugly about it. And their whole intention was for the press to talk ugly about it so that they could possibly break her. They could talk enough junk that she would run away, that she would decide that she would have decided that this was just too much. I'm not going to stay here. So they were kind of trying to run her off, but kind of doing it in a very surreptitious way to make it not seem that way. Yeah, you know how my trust issues are. Yeah. So those are my thoughts, right, Joe? My darling Joseph, how are you doing, my love? I am here enjoying the Miami morning. How are you doing, my love? Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you all for coming. We're moving on to chapter 32. I told Elf and Jason that I wanted to propose. Congratulations, both men said. But then Elf said he'd need to do some fast digging, find out the protocols. There were strict rules governing such things. Rules? Really? He came back days later and said before doing anything, I'd need to ask Granny's permission. I asked him if that was a real rule or the kind we would work around. Oh no, it's very real. It didn't make sense. A grown man asking his grandmother for permission to marry? I couldn't recall I couldn't recall Willie asking before he proposed to Kate, or my cousin Peter asking before he proposed to his wife Autumn. But come to think of it, I did remember Pa asking permission when he wanted to marry Camilla. Yes, because Camilla was a divorcee. So, oh yes. The absurdity of a 56-year-old man asking his mother's permission had been lost on me at the time. Ev said there was no point in examining the whys and hows. This was the inalterable rule. The first six in line, the first six in line to the throne had to ask permission. the Royal Marriages Act of 1772, or the succession to the Crown Act of 2013. He was going on and on and on, and I could barely believe my ears. The point was, the point was, love took a decided backseat to law. Indeed, law had trumped love on more than one occasion. A fairly recent relative had been strongly dissuaded from marrying the love of their life. Who? Your Aunt Margaret. Really? Yes, she'd wanted to marry a divorcee. And well, divorce? Elf nodded. Oh shit, I thought. This might not be a slam dunk after all. But Pa and Camilla were divorcees, I said, and they'd gotten permission. Didn't that mean the rule no longer applied? That's them, Elf said. This is you. Mm. All right. So the rules can be bent and broken according to the queen's liking. She determines when and how the rule can be broken. So she bent and broke the rule for Charles to marry Camilla. She was willing to bend and break the rule for Margaret to marry the man she wanted to marry. And now it's going to be a struggle for her to either bend or break the rules for Harry to marry Meghan. Let's continue on to chapter. No, not on to chapter 33 yet, but yes, but let's continue with chapter 32. That's them, El said. This is you. To say nothing about the furor over a certain king who had wanted to marry an American divorcee, which Elf reminded me had ended with the king's abdication and exile. Duke of Windsor? Ever heard of him? And so, heart full of fear, mouth full of dust, I turned to the calendar. With Elf's help, I circled a weekend in late October, a family shooting trip at Sandringham. Shooting trips always put Granny in a good mood. Perhaps she'd be more open to thoughts of love. Mm, okay, so even Harry's being quite strategic in his intentions to ask his grandmother's permission to marry Meghan. So he's thinking of asking her at the time when they're on a shooting trip because he thinks that at that time she's usually in a good mood. And being in a good mood might mean that she might think of the love that he has for her and grant him permission rather than at another time when she might not be in such a good mood. Strategic move, Harry. We're moving on to chapter 33. Cloudy, blustery day. I jumped into the venerable old Land Rover, the ancient army ambulance that Grandpa had repurposed. Pa was behind the wheel. Willie was in the back. I got into the passenger seat and wondered if I should tell them both what I was intending. I decided against it. Pa already knew, I assumed, and Willie had already warned me not to do it. It's too fast, he told me, too soon. In fact, he had actually been pretty discouraging about my even dating Meg. One day, sitting together in his garden, he had predicted a host of difficulties I could expect if I hooked up with an American actress, a phase he always managed to make sound like convicted felons. Are you sure about her, Harold? I am, Willie, I am. But do you know how difficult it's going to be? What do you want me to do? Fall out of love with her? The three of us were wearing flat caps, green jackets, plus fours, as if we had played for some sports team. In a way, I suppose we did. Pa, driving us out into the fields, asked about Meg, not with great interest, just casually. Still, he didn't always ask, so I was pleased. She's good, thanks. Does she want to carry on working? Say again? Does she want to keep on acting? Oh, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't think so. I expect she'd want to be with me, doing the job, which would rule out suits. Since they film in Toronto. Hmm, I see. Well, darling boy, there's not enough money to go around. I stared. What was he banging on about? He explained, or tried to. I can't pay for anyone else. I'm already having to pay for your brother and Catherine. I flinched. Something about his use of the name Catherine. I remembered the time he and Camilla wanted Kate to change the spelling of her name because there were already two royal ciphers with a C and a crown above, Charles and Camilla. It would be too confusing to have another. Make it Catherine with a K, they had suggested. I wondered how that came of that suggestion. I turned to Willie, gave him a look that said, "You listening to this?" His face was blank. Pa didn't financially support Willie and me and our families out of any largesse. That was his job. That was the whole deal. We agreed to serve the monarch, go wherever we were sent, do whatever we were told, surrender our autonomy, keep our hands and feet inside the gilded cage at all times, and in exchange, the keepers of the cage agreed to feed and clothe us. Was Pa, with all his millions from the hugely lucrative Duchy of Cornwall, trying to say that our captivity was starting to cost him a bit too much? Guys, you all hear that? Besides which, how much could it possibly cost to house and feed Meg? I wanted to ask. She doesn't eat much, and I'll ask her to make her own clothes if you like. It was suddenly clear to me that this wasn't about money. Pa might have dreaded the rising costs of maintaining us, but what he really couldn't stomach was someone new dominating the monarchy, grabbing the limelight, someone shiny and new coming in and overshadowing him and Camilla. He had lived through that before and had no interest in living through it again. I couldn't deal with any of that right now. I had no time for petty jealousies and palace intrigue. I was still trying to work out exactly what to say to Granny, and the time had come. Guys, you hear that? So now, so now, Charles is finding an excuse that he cannot support someone else in the family. What a piece of debauchery. Guys, I tell you, I said from day one, I supported Harry and Meghan once they started dating, and not just because she is black, but because of the love that he shows for her. And the fact that ever since, I'm not like a royal fanatic, I don't run around watching them and reading everything. But the few times that I've come across Harry, I've always thought that he was so much like his mother. When I watched him go to Jamaica on those royal tours representing his grandmother back in the day before he was with Meghan. And I saw how he interacted with the people. A stark difference from his brother when he went when the brother Willie went out on those assignments. He was so stiff collared and walking stiffly like his grandmother, barely even interacting with the locals. And I thought, he's so stiff and so out of touch with the people who are running around hailing the queen and all of this mess. And whenever I saw Harry, it was such a contrast. He was always interacting with the crowd. He seemed to know about social events and you know about other people and what others are doing in terms of humanity, how they are interacting with other humans and what they're doing to improve the lives of other humans. While Willie, he seems so distant. I don't know if you all felt that way, but I've always felt that about him. That he was so distant from the real world and real people and just stuck up in his life, his royal life. Like that was the only thing quite important to him. While Harry was such a different person. And I say it again that Harry has his mother's heart and Willie has his mother's face. But let us continue. Grant, what's up? How you doing? How you doing? And here now, Charles is talking about it will be too much to take care of to take care of somebody who has her own money and can care for herself. And he's talking about it's gonna be too much to take care of her. Oh, the shits they talk over there. It's not even funny. But let us continue. We'll read the last chapter so that you all can understand what I was rambling about. I couldn't feel with any of that right now. I had no time for petty jealousies and palace intrigue. I was still trying to work out exactly what to say to Granny, and the time had come. The Land Rover stopped. We piled out and lined up along the edge, being placed by Pa. We waited for the birds to appear. The wind was blowing, and my mind was all over the place. But as the first drive began, I found that I was shooting well. I got into the zone. Maybe it was a relief to think about something else. Maybe I preferred focusing on the next shot rather than the big shot I was planning to take. I just kept swinging that barrel, squeezing that trigger, hitting every target. We broke for lunch. I tried repeatedly, but wasn't able to get Granny by herself. Everyone was surrounding her, talking her ears off. So I so I tucked into the meal, bidding my time. A classic royal shooting luncheon, cold feet warming by the fires, toasting potatoes, juicy meat, creamy soup, staff overseeing every detail, then perfect puds, then a little tea, a drink or two, then back to the birds. During the day's final two drives, I was constantly sneaking peeks in Granny's direction to see how she was doing. She seemed good and very locked in. Did she really have no idea what was coming? After the final drive, the party scattered. Everyone finished picking up their birds and returned to the Land Rovers. I saw Granny jump into her smaller Range Rover, and drive out into the middle of the stubble field. She began looking for dead birds while her dogs hunted. There was no security around her, so this looked to be my chance. I walked out to the middle of the stubble field, fell in alongside her, began helping. While we scanned the ground for dead birds, I tried to engage her in some lighter chat to loosen her up and to loosen up my vocal cords. The wind was stronger, and Granny's cheeks looked cold, despite the scarf wrapped tightly around her head. Not helping matters. My subconscious was just popping. The full seriousness of all this was finally starting to sink in. If Granny said no, would I have to say goodbye to Meg? I couldn't imagine being without her, but I also couldn't imagine being openly disobedient to Granny, my queen, my commander in chief, my grandmother. If she withheld her permission, my heart would break. And of course, I'd look for another occasion to ask again, but the odds would be against me. Granny wasn't exactly known for changing her mind, so this moment was either the start of my life or the end. It would all come down to the words I chose, how I delivered them, and how Granny heard them. If all that wasn't enough to make me tongue-tied, I'd been plenty of press rep- I'd seen plenty of press reports sourced to the palace that some in my family didn't quite, shall we say, approve of Meg. Yes, Grant, I believe so too. He tries to put out a face like smiling in front of the cameras, but behind the scenes, he was a little shitty as well. Yeah, yeah, he was, I think. And I really understand this book. Some people say the things in the book are lies. I don't think there's any lie. You cannot tell somebody they are lying when they tell you their experience. If it's their experience, it is their experience. And you can't tell them they're lying. Yeah, he's a big fake. Let us continue. All right, let's go back to that paragraph. If all that wasn't enough to make me tongue tied, I'd seen plenty of press reports sourced to the palace that some in my family didn't quite, shall we say, approve of Meg. Didn't fancy her directness. Didn't feel altogether comfortable with her strong work ethic. didn't even enjoy her occasional questions. What was healthy and natural inquisitiveness they deemed to be impertinence. There were also whispers about a vague and pervasive unease regarding her race. Concern, they said, had been expressed in certain corners about whether or not Britain was ready. Whatever that meant, was any of that rubbish reaching Granny's ears? If so, was this request for permission merely a hopeless exercise? Was I doomed to be the next Margaret? Oh, a Brio. Wow. All right. You see, he's having a lot of thoughts. He's so worried. I can't imagine having to ask your grandmother for permission to marry the woman you love and all the jitteries that's going on in his mind, in his brain, in his heart, and knowing that Harry is already a little bit broken. He's been broken from his mother. He has been broken ever since he started dating Meghan by the things that they have been saying in the press and, making references to, primate animals and the dreads and talking about Compton and just belittling, and harassing Meghan and her mom and her family. I mean, I can only imagine what he was going through. I thought back over the many hinge moments in my life when permission was required, requesting permission from control to fire on the enemy, requesting permission from the Royal Foundation to create the Invictus Games. I thought of pilots requesting permission from me to cross my airspace. My life all at once felt like an endless series of permission requests, all of them a prelude to this one. Granny started walking back to her Range Rover. I quick stepped after her, the dogs circling my feet. Looking at them, my mind began to race. My mother used to say that being around Granny and the Corkis was like standing on a moving carpet, and I used to know most of them, living and dead. And if they were my cousins, Dookie, Emma, Susan, Lynette, Pickles, Chipper, they were all said they were all said to descend from the Corkis that belonged to Queen Victoria. The more things change, the more they stay the same. But these weren't Corkis. These were hunting dogs, and they had a different purpose. And I had a different purpose. And I realized that I needed to get it without 1 second more of hesitation. So as Granny lowered the tailgate, as the dogs leapt up, as I thought of petting them, but then remembered I had a dead bird in each hand, their limp necks nestled between my fingers, their glazed eyes rolled all the way back. I feel you, birds. I feel you. Their bodies still warm through my gloves. I turned inside. I turned instead to Granny and saw her turn to me and frown. Did she recognize that I was afraid of both the request for permission and Her Majesty? Did she realize that no matter how much I loved her, I was often nervous in her presence? And I saw her waiting for me to speak and not waiting patiently. Her face radiated. Out with it. I coughed. Granny, you know I love Meg very much, and I've decided that I would like to ask her to marry me. And I've been told that I have to ask your permission before I can propose. You have to. Well, yes, that's what your staff tell me, and my staff as well, that I have to ask your permission. I stood completely still, as motionless as the birds in my hands. I stared at her face, but it was unreadable. At last she replied, well, then, I suppose I have to say yes. I squinted. You feel you have to say yes? Does that mean you are saying yes, but that you wanted to say no? I didn't get it. Was she being sarcastic, ironic, deliberately cryptic? Was she indulging in a bit of wordplay? I'd never known Granny to do any wordplay, and this would be a surpassingly bizarre moment, not to mention wildly inconvenient for her to start. But maybe She just saw the chance to play off my unfortunate use of the word have and couldn't resist. Or else, perhaps, there was some hidden meaning beneath the wordplay, some message I wasn't comprehending. I stood there squinting, smiling, asking myself over and over, what is the Queen of England saying to me right now? At long last, I realized she's saying yes. You moped, she's granting permission. Who cares how she words it? Just know when to take yes for an answer. So I sputtered, right, okay, Granny. Well, fabulous. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I wanted to hug her. Welcome into the live, guys. Thank you all so much for coming in. This is your favorite nurse and your favorite reader, Trevisence Unstoppable. And this Sunday morning, we are reading from the book Spare, written by Prince Harry. If you are new here, a very, very special welcome to you. Thank you so much for stopping by. There's currently about 12 million people in the house. Please don't forget to hit that like button. And if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, now is a great time to do so. And to all my returning travelers, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for your continued support. I see my brother Overton is in the house. Happy Sunday to you, my darling. Overton in the house. And Kat says, all because they were better human beings than they were better human beings than they will ever be. Yes, that is so true, Kat. I'm with you on that one, my sister. I'm with you. I mean, royal life has given them so much pump that they don't see themselves as common as humans, as regular people. I mean, regular things are for regular people, which are considered to be the commoners, and royal happenings are for the royals who are separate from us. And so separate that when Harry went to draw his blood, for those of you who were here, when Harry went to get his blood drawn, he he made mention of how his blood was red, just like everybody else's. But in the royal family, they talk about themselves having blue blood, which was different from everybody else's. The shits they talk, the, the shits people. Oh my God, there's so much fun listening to that Saniki. Oh my God, I'm glad you're enjoying it, my love. My dear sister Emanji, how are you doing, my darling? So good to see you as always, my love. I love you, my sweetheart. Thank you so much for coming, my dear friends. We are going to read that last chapter again, that last paragraph again. So I sputtered, right, okay, Granny, well, fabulous, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I wanted to hug her. I longed to hug her. I didn't hug her. I saw her into the Range Rover, then marched back to Pa and Willie. Chapter 34. I took a ring from Meg's jewelry box and gave it to a designer so he'd know her size. Since he was also the keeper of Mommy's bracelets, earrings, and necklaces, I asked him to harvest the diamonds from one particular beautiful bracelet of Mommy's and use those to create a ring. I'd cleared all this in advance with Willie. I'd asked my brother if I could have the bracelet and told him what it was for. I don't recall him hesitating for 1 second in giving it to me. He seemed to like Meg, despite his off-sighted concerns. Kate seemed to like her too. We had had them over for dinner during one of Meg's visits, and Meg cooked, and everything was good. Willie had a cold. He was sneezing and coughing, and Meg ran upstairs and got him some of her homemade opathic cure-alls, oregano oil, turmeric. He seemed charmed, moved, though Kate announced to the table that he had never taken such unconventional remedies. We talked about Wimbledon that night and Suits, and Willie and Kate weren't brave enough to admit to being superfans, which was sweet. The only possibility I could think of was the marked difference in how the two women dressed, which both of them seemed to notice. Megan wore ripped jeans and barefoot. Meg was all done up to the nines. No big deal, I thought. Along with the diamonds from the bracelet, I'd asked the designer to add a third, a blood-free diamond from Botswana. Oh gosh, I'm almost feeling like he's preparing that ring for me. I almost feel like Harry is preparing that ring for me because I'm seeing the ring and it's like I'm seeing his face as I'm reading it. And I'm thinking that well, in my mind, he made that ring for me. All right. Elizabeth, hello, Liz. How are you doing? How are you doing, my friend? So good to see you. Thank you so much for stopping by. Guys, there is my friend Liz in the chat. Don't forget to give her the traveler's kind of welcome. Over over time. Harry beat you to it. Harry's making that ring for me. Oh, oh my gosh. Let's read that again. Along with the diamonds from the bracelet, I'd asked the designer to add a third, a blood-free diamond from Botswana. He asked if there was a rush. Well, now that you mention it, oh my God. My neighbor is so noisy. Look at his face. All right, let's move on to chapter 35. Meg packed up her house, gave up her role in suits after 7 seasons. A difficult moment for her because she loved that show, loved the character she was playing, loved her cast and crew. She loved Canada. On the other hand, life there had become untenable, especially on set. The show writers were frustrated because they were often advised by the Palace comms team to change lines of dialogue, what her, char- what her character would do, how she would act. Oh, really? Okay. So even the show Suits was being impacted by Harry being with Meghan. So I guess the palace no longer wanted Meghan to play roles that involved her kissing or hugging other men in the show. But the heck with it. They came into her life when she was already on the show. So now here is the control. And I don't know too many. I don't know too many of our sisters who was going to be putting up with that. Now you're controlling my entire life just because you can. So here, the writers of the show are frustrated because now they have to be rewording all the script and redoing all the acts just so that they can please the palace. When Suits wasn't initially made around the palace, but now the palace is dictating what they do and what they don't. Oh no. Let's continue. She'd also shut down her website and abandoned all social media, again at the behest of the Palace Coms team. She had said goodbye to her friends, goodbye to her car, goodbye to one of her dogs, Bogart. He had been so traumatized by the siege of her house, by the constant ringing of the doorbell, that his demeanor changed when Meg was around. He had he had become an aggressive guard dog. Meg's neighbors had graciously agreed to adopt him. But Guy came, not my friend, Meg's other dog, her beat up little beagle, who was even more beat up of late. He missed Bogart, of course, but more, he was badly injured. Days before Meg left Canada, Guy had run away from his minder. Meg was at work. He had been found miles away from Meg's house, unable to walk. His legs were now in a cast. I often had to hold him upright so he could pee. I didn't mind in the least. I loved that dog. I couldn't stop kissing him, petting him. Yes, my intense feelings for Meg spilled over onto anyone or anything she loved, but also I'd wanted a dog for so long and I'd never been able to have one because I'd been such a nomad. One night, not long after Meg's arrival in Britain, we were at home making dinner, playing with Guy, and the kitchen of Notcut was full of love as any room I'd ever been in. I opened a bottle of champagne, an old gift I'd been saving for a special occasion. Morning, Plumber. How are you doing, my love? So good to see you. Meg smiled. What's the occasion? No occasion. I scooped up Guy, carried him outside into the walled garden, put him down on a blanket I'd spread on the grass. Then I ran back inside and asked Meg to grab her champagne flute and come with me. What's up? Nothing. I led her out to the garden. Cold night. We were both wrapped in big coats, and hers had a hood lined with fake fur that framed her face like a cameo. I set electric candles around the blanket. I wanted it to look like Botswana, the bush, where I'd first thought of proposing. Now I knelt on the blanket, Guy at my side. Both of us looked up searchingly at Meg. My eyes already full of tears, I brought the ring out of my pocket and said my piece. I was shivering, and my heart was audibly thumping, and my voice was unsteady, but she got the idea. Spend your life with me? Make me the happiest guy on this planet? Yes! 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 I laughed. She laughed. What other reaction could there be? Is in this mixed up world, this pain filled life, we had done it. We had managed to find each other. Yes! Yes! They had found each other. Then we were crying and laughing and petting Guy, who looked frozen solid. We started for the house. Oh, wait, don't you want to see the ring, my love? She hadn't even thought about it. We hurried inside, finished our celebration in the warmth of the kitchen. It was November 4. We managed to keep it secret for about 2 weeks. I'm so excited. I feel like somebody just proposed to me, guys. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. This is super exciting. I've gone over the 1 hour mark, but we're going to continue. It's Sunday morning after all. We are going to continue. And we are at 79% of the book already. So it's going to take us just a few more days for us to finish it. And I can't wait. Let me see if I can snag another Harry's Harry's book. Guys, tell me what you think. Or is there a book that you all want to recommend me to read? If there is a book, those of you who are here this morning, if there's a book you want to recommend, put it in the chat so I can grab it and put it onto my Kindle and we can start reading it as soon as this one is finished because we're close to the end of this one and we want to continue. We want to continue reading. Reading is so much fun, and I've enjoyed reading all my life, always having my head in a book. So it's now my absolute pleasure sharing my love of reading with you all. We are on to chapter 36. Ordinarily, I'd, I'd have gone to Megan's father first, asked for his blessing, but Thomas Markle was a complicated man. He and Meg's mother split when she was 2, and thereafter she divided her time between them. Monday to Friday with mom, weekends with dad. Then, for part of high school, she had moved in with her father full time. They were that close. We- I know Winsome is going to put the Bible, and we are going to get to that. We are going to get to that, Sister Winsome. We will for sure. They were that close. After college, she had traveled the world, but always stayed in constant contact with Daddy. She still, even in her 30s, called him Daddy. She loved him, worried about him, his health, his habits, and often relied upon him. Throughout her run on Suits, she had consulted him every week about the lighting. He had been a lighting director in Hollywood, won 2 Emmys. In recent years, however, he hadn't been working regularly and he had sort of disappeared. He had rented a small house in a Mexican border town and wasn't doing well after all. In every way, Meg felt her father would never be able to withstand the psychological pressures that came with being stalked by the press. And that was now happening to him. It had long been open season on everyone in Meg's circle, every current friend and ex-boyfriend, every cousin, including those she had never known, every former employer or former co-worker. But after I proposed, there was a frenzy around the father. He was considered the prize catch. When the Daily Mirror when the Daily Mirror published his location, Paps descended on his house, taunting him, trying to tempt or lure him outside. No fox hunt, no bear baiting was ever more depraved. Strange men and women dangled offers of money, gifts, friendship. When none of that worked, they rented the house next door and shot him day and night through his windows. The press reported that, as a result, Meg's father had nailed plywood over his windows. But that wasn't even true. He had often had plywood nailed over his windows, even when living in Los Angeles, well before Meg started dating me. Complicated man. They had then begun following him into town, tailing him on his errands, walking behind him as he went up and down the aisles of local shops. They had run photos of him with the headline, "Got him." Meg would often Meg would often phone her father, urged him to remain calm. "Don't speak to them, Daddy. Ignore them. They'll go away eventually, as long as you don't react. That's what the palace says to do." Chapter 37. It was hard for both of us, while dealing with all that, to focus on the million and one details of play. Let's do that again. Chapter 37. It was hard for both of us, while dealing with all that, to focus on the million and one details of planning a royal wedding. Right, that's my neighbor. Strangely, the palace had trouble focusing too. We wanted to get married quickly. Why give the papers and paps time to do their worst? But the palace couldn't seem to pick a date or a venue. While waiting for a decree from on high, from the nebulous upper regions of the royal decision making apparatus, we went off on a traditional engagement tour. England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. We traveled up and down and all over the UK, introducing Meg to the public. Crowds went wild for her. "Meg, Diana would have loved you." I heard women scream this again and again. A total departure from the tone and tenor of the tabloids, and also a reminder the British press wasn't reality. On our return from that trip, I rang Willie, sounded him out, asked him through asked his thoughts about where we might get married. I told him we were thinking of Westminster Abbey. "No good. We did it there." "Right, right. St. Paul's." "Too grand. Plus Pa and Mummy did it there." "Hmm. Yes, good point." He suggested Tetbury. I snorted. "Tetbury? The chapel near Highgrove? Seriously, Willie? How how many does that place seat? Isn't that what you said you wanted? A small, quiet wedding?" In fact, we wanted to elope barefoot in Botswana with maybe a friend officiating. That was our dream. But we were expecting to share this moment with other people. It wasn't up to us. So you see what you said earlier, Grant? Yes, that Willie is really something else. He's sort of like a little undercover hater. Now, he doesn't want his brother to have a wedding where he had his. He doesn't want his brother to have his wedding where their parents had theirs. He wants his brother to have a wedding in a little unknown place, somewhere way out in the bushes of the palace. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, let's continue. Chapter 38. Chapter 38. I turned back to the palace. "Any progress on the date? A venue?" "Nope," was the reply. "How about March?" Alas, March was all booked. "How about June?" "Sorry, Garter Day." Hmm. At last, they came to us with a date, May 2018, and they accepted our request for a location, St. George's Chapel. That settled, we made our first public outing with Willie and Kate. The Royal Foundation Forum, February 2018. All four of us sat on a stage while a woman asked us softball questions before a fairly good sized audience. The foundation was nearly 10 years in existence, and we spoke about its past while looking to its future with us four at the helm. The audience was keen. All four of us were having fun. The whole atmosphere was hugely positive. Afterwards, one journalist dubbed us the Fab Four. Here we go, I thought hopefully. Days later, controversy. Something about Meg showing support for the Me Too movement and Kate not showing support via their outfits. I think that was the gist. Though, who can say it wasn't real? But I think it had Kate on edge while putting her and everyone else on notice that she was now going to be compared to and forced to compete with Meg. All this came on the heels of an awkward moment backstage. Meg asked to borrow Kate's lip gloss. Really? An American thing. Meg forgot hers, worried she needed some, and turned to Kate for help. Kate, taken aback, went into her handbag and reluctantly pulled out a small tube. Meg squeezed some onto her finger and applied it to her lip. Kate grimaced. Small clash of styles, maybe. Something we should have been able to laugh about soon after, but it left a little mark. And then the press sensed something was up and tried to turn it into something really big. Here we go, I thought sorrowfully. Oh, wow. Okay. So, supposedly, it's an American thing to just borrow lip gloss. Well, to each their own, but they're just some personal items that we do not share. Lip gloss being one of them. But I guess depending on your upbringing, because I've seen people share lip gloss before, and I guess if Meg feels like they are close enough where she can at least squeeze some lip gloss on her hand and apply, hey, ain't no big deal. Ain't no big deal. At least she's going to be part of the family and stuff. But I guess in that moment, she sort of forgot that she was black. I guess, yeah, I'm just being real and honest here. In that itsy bitsy moment, did she forget that she was black? Okay. That's one thing us black girls never should ever forget. Never forget your blackness. Never forget that there are people out there who will laugh with you, who will smile with you, who will sit and eat with you, but they will eat from their own plate. You know, us we like to share, and a lot of times we like sit around the table and share something. For example, when I went out for my birthday with my kids, we would share. If one of my kids took something from the buffet that I didn't take, they'd be like, "Mommy, you want to taste this?" I don't have a problem tasting it off their plate. But when you are out with people who deep down are considering your difference, you don't do that. They do not want to share off the same plate as you. They will talk to you because it looks aesthetically beautiful to the onlookers that yes, they're talking to you and you are black. They're working with you and you are black. So aesthetically, it looks okay. But deep down in their heart, the real them will come out the moment the moment you try to make it seem like you are equals. That is why I know my lane, I know my place. And there are some circles and some places that Aunt Trev do not go. Yeah, I'm not intimidated by them, but I also know my place. So that was a lesson there. That was a lesson there for Sister Megs, for her to understand that even though they be smiling with you, they never forget your blackness. Yeah, they don't forget it. We are going to continue, guys. One more chapter. I'm just preparing you for it. That one, for me, no share exactly, card. For me, we ain't sharing lip gloss, we ain't sharing lipstick. We are not sharing that kind of things. We're not sharing, yeah, those things are kind of too personal. But anywho, let's get past that little hump in the road and let's move on to chapter 39. And this is going to be the last chapter for today because I'm going to go inside and get ready with my grandbabies. I think I'm taking them out to the beach. Yeah, we're going out to the beach, I think, later. I'll probably do a vlog from there so y'all can see what's going on. All right. So let's move on to chapter 39. Granny formally approved the marriage in March of 2018, my royal decree. Meanwhile, Meg and I were already a growing family. We brought home a new puppy, a sibling for little Guy. We had been needing one, poor thing. So when a friend in Norfolk told me his black Labrador had a litter and offered me a gorgeous amber-eyed female, I couldn't say no. Meg and I named her Pulla, the Setswana word for rain, and good fortune. Many mornings I'd wait. What? Who this text me? No. The answer is an emphatic no. Meg and I named her Pulla, the Setswana word for rain, and good fortune. Many mornings I'd wake up to find myself surrounded by beings I loved, who loved me and depended on me. And I thought I simply had no right to this much good fortune. Work challenges aside, this was happiness. Life was good. And following along a predestined track, seemingly, the decree about the wedding coincided uncannily with the airing of Meg's farewell season of Suits, in which her character, Rachel, was also preparing to get married. Art and life imitating each other. Descent of Suits, I thought, marrying Meg off the show instead of pushing her down a lift shaft. There were enough people in real life trying to do that. That spring, however, the press was quieter, keener about breaking news of wedding details than inventing new libels. Each day there was another work exclusive about the flowers, the music, the food, the cake. No detail too small, not even the Portellos. It was it was reported that we'd be providing the poshest Portellos on earth, porcelain basins, gold-laden seats, after being inspired by the ones at Pippa Middleton's wedding. You all remember Pippa Middleton? Pippa Middleton is Kate's sister. You all remember? Pippa was at Kate and Willie's wedding, and she actually stole the show. I remember their wedding, and Pippa looked so stunning. Everybody's eyes was on Pippa more than they were on Kate. In reality, we didn't notice anything different about how or where people went pee or poo at Pippa's, and we had nothing to do with choosing the Portaloos for ours. But we sincerely hoped that everyone would be able to do their thing in comfort and in peace. Above all, we hoped the royal correspondents would continue to write about poo instead of trying to stir it up. So when the palace encouraged us to feed more wedding details to those correspondents known as the royal rota, we obeyed. At the same time, I told the palace that on the big day, the happiest day of our lives, I didn't want to see one single royal correspondent inside that chapel unless Murdoch himself apologized for phone hacking. The palace scoffed. It would be all out war. The courtiers warned to bar the royal rota from the wedding. Then let's go to war, I said. It's had it I'd had it with the royal rota both the individuals and the system, which was more outdated than the horse and cart. It had been it had been devised some 40 years earlier to give British print and broadcast reporters first crack at the royal family, and it stank to the highest heavens. It discouraged fair competition, engendered, engendered chronicism, encouraged a small mob of hacks to feel entitled. After weeks of wrangling, it was agreed the royal rota wouldn't be allowed in the chapel, but they could gather outside. A small win, which I hugely celebrated. And that is the end of chapter 39. Now, y'all hear what I have to go through? That's my daughter hollering for me at the right time. Yeah. So, no, so guys, now I've got to go. She's calling for my presence. And you all hear her hollering for me. Oh my gosh. My daughter is something else. So here we go now, guys. This is the end of chapter 39. When we come back, we will move on to chapter 40 of part 3, the book Spare, written by Prince Harry. I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you who have come in to listen. And I see the numbers keep going up of people who have been coming in to listen to me read this book. And I sincerely appreciate every single second that you all have come in and listened. I sincerely appreciate it. And I thank you all so, so, so much. Join us again tomorrow morning as we continue the reading. Until next time, my friends, this is Trev from Treversence, where your journey matters. Have yourselves a great day, guys.